Welcome to the People's Forum. Welcome back, America. We have another exciting show. Today's theme is fatherhood, something that is not always spoken about in the brightest of lights. But today I have two wonderful fathers with me, strong, courageous men who have taken up the mantle to co-parent and or raise their children or raise sisters and brothers, nieces and nephews, just unselfishly, just trying to give back. To my left, I have Mr. Will Adams. And
Thank you,
sitting next to him is Booker G's author and returning guest.
Thank you.
All right, fellas, all right. We're going to kick right in. Fatherhood, what does it mean to you? I want you guys to spill the beans, man. Tell us about it. When did you become a father? How many kids do you have? Give us some history.
I have four children. I have three biologically. I'm raising my girlfriend's son as well. Since he was 2, he's now 14. My first son I had when I was 31. And for me, fatherhood pretty much is just like the greatest gift. You know, being a creator and being someone who enjoys inventing and creating things like I was able to do with writing this book, you know, and coming up with ideas and concepts, you know, having a child and developing them and raising them to become, you know, young adults and eventually to become adults is like the greatest gift I have in life to have.
I agree, likewise. I agree. What do you say, Will?
I have maybe 2.5. I raised my oldest nephew when he was maybe 16, 17. I took him under my wing, and that's where I probably got some of my practice. And I have my own two who are 11 and 8. I became a father at 38, I believe, and I love it. I think it's a blessing. I'm blessed to be a father. I'm blessed for the opportunity to teach and instill what I believe to be right, wrong, and good and bad. That I can control. You know, I never wanted to be the guy who was going to blame it on the teacher or blame it on the nanny or blame it on the babysitter. And the only way you can do that is by being present, being extremely present.
Exactly. And to that, I have to say something. Most people probably won't say this. They probably won't tell the truth. I was terrified of becoming a father. I'll fight 20 people. I'll go into a blazing building. I'll get in a submarine. But to have to accept the responsibility to be someone's parent every day, no sick days. You know, you don't get a minute off.
Right.
For me, that was one of the scariest things on earth.
And I think that that's something that a lot of people, a lot of men today pull away from because they don't want to admit the fact that they are fearful of that responsibility.
You have to be honest about it.
Right.
That's the scariest thing that ever happened to me in my life.
Right.
To know that there's going to be an individual that's going to count on you for everything.
Everything.
You know, and without being, you know, forgive the language, a dirtbag, there's no way to get around it.
Got to do it.
You know, but once it happens, I mean, I remember when Usman was born, you know, and you feel, you know, this little life, you know, and you have them on your chest and you're holding them, and I even wore that strap thing.
I did too.
You know, the front papoose harness. You know, it feels funny after a while, but you a little pride.
Right.
The Bajon, the baby Bajon.
I remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I'd be at
I had
the
that
museum
also.
with one in my hand and the other one in here, and you walk them around, you start talking to them, but it's a blessing.
Carrying a diaper bag, man.
Absolutely.
Fellas, if you never carried a diaper bag, you're not a real man.
That's a fact.
Let you know that.
Not a real father. That's a fact.
Tell us a little bit about your history, your story. Give us some about France, Will.
My family immigrated here from France when I was about 4.5, 5 years old. My father was originally from Montgomery, Alabama, and I don't think that the political climate at the time when he returned in the mid-'70s was going to allow him to take a red-haired, blue-eyed white woman back to Alabama. And I'm not giving this man an excuse for doing whatever he chose to do, but I think the pressures were so much that he chose to leave. So I watched a beautiful woman work as hard as she possibly could to raise 4 kids, and I made it a mission of mine that I would never, not never allow my children to grow up without a father present.
I think that's what happens to us. We get to that point in the door where it's red pill, blue pill. You know, you're going to make the left or the right and the fork in the road. And some of us, you know, because of fear and I think social constructs, make that left. And then some of us say, you know, I got a parachute on. You know, I'm going to jump out. I'm taking the right. And we jump out and we handle it. And it's many times it's trial by fire because it's not something that we have in our lexicon. But it works out. There are really, really, really good, poignant moments where you look at your kids and you say, man, it was a hard day, but I'm blessed.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
I'm blessed. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Well,
Book.
pretty much, you know, becoming an author and writing this book, the premise of the book is based on a father's love for his children. So, you know, basically starting out the book,
And
I talk
in
about...
case they didn't catch that episode, it's Locked Up and Put Away, Lupa.
Right.
Go ahead.
Lupa is the acronym for the book, Locked Up and Put Away. But basically, the book, it talks about my love for my children and the sacrifices I had to make for them to be a provider and not neglect their needs as a father. And I basically got this, the whole concept of being a father from being raised by a single parent. You know, my mother raised my brother and I, and the sacrifices she had to make because unfortunately my father passed away from a car accident when I was at the age of 3. So she had to make decisions as a mother and as a father at the same time. And she was a college professor, and she moved my brother and I from a very bad neighborhood in the Bronx to a better, more multicultural neighborhood in Riverdale in the Bronx. And the schooling was better. My brother and I were just responsible to get an education and play sports. And she pretty much gave my brother and I a blueprint on what it takes to be a good parent. And we didn't have to look at a parent that walked away or watch someone else that was in our life that would be a detriment to our development as men. And that kind of helped me know what it takes to become a parent. And I use that as a blueprint.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the common denominator amongst us is strong mothers.
That's what
mothers
it's
doing it
about.
themselves. And like I said, a parent is a parent. You know, sex doesn't matter. Believe it or not, fellas, the amount of money you have does not matter.
Right.
I want to tell a story. I used to be a school resource officer in Long Island, and many days when school was closed, we would go to the parks, interact, and that way we would be able to have one-on-one interactions with a lot of kids. And I would see a guy there every weekend. You know, he'd be there Friday, be there every weekend. And I just thought, you know, pick up a conversation, start talking to him, and I'm like, you know, do you live here? Because you're here every weekend. I mean, how are you here so much? And he says, no. He says, I share custody. I co-parent with my ex-wife. But because I don't really have a lot of money, you know, I have a, you know, job I'm getting by right now, but I don't have a lot of disposable income. So what I do is I get on a train. I take the train from Manhattan to Queens to get on the bus. I ride that bus to the Nassau County Terminal, get on another bus, and I come here to pick my kids up from school. And after school, we come to the park, and we just play. You know, they play, I play with them. We go to my ex-wife's house. I make food, and I sleep on the floor in the living room just so that I can spend that time with them. And it's not about money.
Right.
And I try to tell guys all the time, you know, if you reduce yourself to a paycheck, if you reduce yourself to child support, then you'll steal from your kid's life. It's about the time that you can put in, because that's what my daughter used to always say, Daddy, it's about my memories, when she wanted to get over with something. It's about my memories, Daddy. What are one of the fondest memories you have of any of your kids? I mean, just something to make us laugh.
I mean, I can't really figure out something that off the top of my head that made me laugh, but I know that for my son, who is now 20 and he's a junior at Binghamton, he, you know, just trying to figure, you know, I'm a very athletic person, so I wasn't used to having a child that wasn't as athletic as I was. So he was more of a bookworm, and, you know, I had to respect that part of him. But I was just always exposing him to so many things. You know, I would put him, sign him up for baseball, sign him up for basketball. You know, I never really tackled football with him, even though I played it and I loved it myself. But he finally found his niche when he got into high school. and he started wrestling, and he became very successful as a wrestler in high school. You know, and he's a pretty thin guy, but for his weight class, he was able to hold it down. So I'm just grateful to be able to expose my children to so many different things, you know, whether it's music, you know, whether it's piano lessons, whether it's, you know, sports, whether it's art, you know, just finding out something that they can, an outlet that they can have to keep them busy. And that's basically one of the things that, you know, I feel assisted in me, you know, creating these children that are just very good people now.
Okay, all right. Will, tell us about that nephew that you helped raise, because I'm acquainted with him, and he's a fantastic man.
As much as I could remember it this way, we all knew how hard it was in the 80s. Crack was a serious epidemic in our communities, and some of my family members got caught up in it. And my nephew was pretty much left to fend for himself. And right when he was at that mark, the green pill or the blue pill, he was about to swallow the wrong pill, and I had to basically come back to the project, snatch him off the block, you know, empty his pockets, get what shouldn't be out of his pockets out of his pockets, kind of kidnapped him to Long Island, introduced him to education and the way to go, and got him into CW Post, and now he's working on a PhD in education. He's a real estate developer, but he was one left turn away from being just another statistic.
But you took the responsibility, and that's what I wanted to allude to. It all comes down to taking the responsibility, picking up a mantle, and, you know, taking charge of it. And saying, I'm responsible for this child. It doesn't matter if I birthed him. It doesn't matter if he's what they like to say, not mine biologically. And I don't, in my family, because we're such a big, diverse family, we don't do biological, we don't do step, we don't do any of that stuff. It's brother and sister, you know, niece and nephew, father, son, cousin, uncle. And that's all it is.
You know, we have to keep in mind that there are a lot of unfortunate young men who have never seen a man get up and go to work. Like, really, really think about that. You've never seen a man in your life get up, take a shower, get dressed, and go to work. So how is it that you can dream to be something you've never seen?
Exactly. What do you emulate? Exactly. What do you emulate?
It is
Who are your role
our
models?
job, outside of our direct children, to try to be in touch with those kids and let them know that we actually exist, that this really does happen. It's not just television, that there are people like yourself and like you and plenty of great people out there, great men who look like these young men who get up every day and go to work. So we need to find a way to make sure we pass that message to them so they don't think this is just made for TV.
Right. And I think also for myself, you know, writing the book had everything to do with being a father figure and being a big brother to a lot of young men who weren't exposed to a man in the house that was coming to work and working every day and making the sacrifices. And I would share my stories with these young men of the things that I wanted to do for my children and how I'm here basically to provide a life for my children. You know, I mean, you know, prior to having children, you know, I had all the sneakers, all the styles and everything. Now they have the stuff first. And I come secondary. You know, I don't remember the last time I went shopping for myself. You know, because I'm always focused on their needs. And those are the things that these men need to know, or young men need to know, the sacrifices you have to make as a parent.
I got a question because often doesn't get said enough. In like 30 seconds or less, because we have to go to a commercial break, what is one of the funniest things you remember your son or daughter saying to you?
One of the funniest things.
The Pandora story is what I'm.
That I have a couple. Well, well, I teach geography and music through the use of Pandora, where I'll let my Pandora spin. My children have been listening to everything from Biggie to Bach to Beethoven to Barbra Streisand. Just music plays constantly. So I asked my son, do you recognize the music? Do you recognize the artist? And if he doesn't, I'll give him some hints and see if he can get to it. So we were listening to Purple Rain for the first time. I said, do you know who that is? And he was like, no. I said, well, he used to compete with Michael Jackson. He used to dress in all purple. My son was, no, no, no. I said, well, if his dad was a king and his mother was a queen, what would he be? And my son said, Your Majesty.
All right. On that note, we're going to go to a public service announcement, a PSA. And when we come back, I'm going to tell a funny story about my kids, Usman and Natala. Going to have you falling on the floor.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy. What do you call a pig that knows karate? Pork chop. So how does a tissue dance? Put a little boogie on it.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
When I get all steamed up, then I shout.
Tip me over and pour me out. Oh.
It only takes a moment to make a moment.
Cheers.
Take time to be a dad today.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Okay, fellas, I'm back. I want to tell one story, and then I'm going to ask you a very important question because I believe we all grew up with this paradigm going on. And I'll allude to it in a second, but the story I wanted to tell was, first one is my son comes back to America from being in Bamako, Mali, West Africa. And he goes to the first time in Freeport to a swimming pool. He just sees a bunch of kids. My daughter isn't even born yet. We carry all of our picnic stuff over to the side. We sit down. This kid drops his towel and runs and jumps into the water. He's not even 3 feet tall.
Wow.
You know, so we run after him. He's, you know, of course, spitting up water and mucus, and we pull him out. What the heck happened? I just wanted to play with the kids.
Wow.
At that point, I knew that he was fearless.
No doubt.
I knew that he would, whatever he got into, and when he got into football, I knew he'd be a hitter. He'd be a hell of a linebacker because he always just jumped into things head first. Now, his sister, the entrepreneur, the business person, you know, you go to BJ's and Costco's and you get the big boxes of chips and pretzels and all those things, and the little Sunny Dew juices. We're going through these things at a rate that one little girl and a little boy cannot, you know, be eating all this stuff because you put one in their lunch for their snack and things like that. I go back to the store, I get another big box of each one. There's like 50 to 100 in each box. It's going to carry us through the month. Within a week, it's gone. So I ask him, Usman, where'd all the snacks go? I don't know. You know, asked my mother, Mom, these snacks disappeared? I don't know. So then we asked Atala, who in the family is affectionately known as Blue. Atala, what happened to these snacks? Oh, Daddy, I gave them away. What do you mean you gave them away? But the other kids didn't have anything, and Grandma says it's always nice to give people things and they don't have anything. But we bought those things. Oh, but you can buy more, Daddy.
Daddy can get everything.
Yeah, Daddy can get everything. Yeah, she's just giving things away, you know. I got a question, and it's a two-part question. How do you integrate a relationship with a lady into your family structure dynamic when you are single or co-parenting? You know, how do you break that ice? What do you do about that, Will?
I don't know that it's breaking the ice for me. For me, they're two separate things that may potentially become one. But initially, for me, I set the rules really clear. My kids are always going to come first. You know, we can be in this relationship and hopefully it'll grow. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But if at any time in your mind you think you're going to come before these kids, we shouldn't even get into this relationship. And furthermore, any man who doesn't tell a woman that, I wouldn't want my daughter or anyone to date. Period. Like, if that man doesn't put his kids first, you shouldn't date him because he's never going to put you first either.
Right.
That's my position on that. And then eventually, if that time comes, you integrate them. But first and foremost, let's just be clear with what the pecking order is.
Definitely, the kids come first. I know for myself. At the time when I separated from my son and daughter's mother, we went through a custody situation, and it was just really important for me to focus on their needs and deal with them and not really concern myself too much with my own personal needs. But I think what ends up happening is that females that see a man that puts all his energy into his children, you become an attractive commodity. Like people, they women see the father in you, dedicating your
Stability.
time.
They see stability.
Yeah, and
they see righteousness.
Yeah, I mean, technically, the person that I'm with now that I've been with for 13 years, what she saw me do was, it was my daughter's 4th birthday, and in the neighborhood that I live in, I actually rented a pony for my daughter for her birthday, and she had a pony, and all the kids in the neighborhood showed up, and I was like the dad of the year for that.
Dad, yeah.
I was like super dad to have a pony, you know what I mean, for her. But, she saw the dedication that I had in my children and how, I made sacrifices for them and I dedicated all my time and energy for them. And that's what attracted her to me, to know that I would be a good dad for our son now.
Fantastic. Another question I have, either one of you guys can answer it. When you get faced, and the reason I ask this is because an old partner of mine, Suzanne Hayes, Germany. Hello, Suzanne. She taught me something that I think is really, really important for parents, both men and women, to know and learn. That when it comes to parenting, you have big problems and small problems. You are not going to make a big deal out of something that's a very small problem. Right. Without sharing too much of the personal, intimate details to her story, we got a call one day at work in reference to her son. And when she described the scenario, what was going on, I was clueless because I still had, a 7-year-old and a 1-year-old. I had no place to search for these answers. And she says, Kwame, in parenting and in life, there are big problems and small problems. And as long as you treat these problems accordingly and use them as teachable moments, then they don't get overblown. Then the kids do learn from them. Have you had any challenging or trying experience where you had to teach from a difficult perspective?
I would have to say not necessarily in that, nothing like huge. I mean, the only thing that I feel like I dealt with was the whole custody issue that I was dealing with my children, to just make sure that they were safe. And at the same time, it also was important for me to develop a good relationship with their mother now, because, as much as I had them with me, they were with her as well. So it was so important for me to not, create just tension between us to interfere with the development of my children. So we have a healthy relationship now.
Yeah, kids always will give you the feeling. Like my daughter is a real good example of this. My son really doesn't talk much at all. I mean, he'll give a head nod occasionally. Unless he's active on a football field or a basketball court, he's not going to say much. When he's on the field, you wonder who that guy is because he's screaming out calls. He's patting guys on the back, doing flips and somersaults, and yelling and waving a towel and pumping the crowd. And I'm like, I don't even know that guy, because he's so quiet. But her, she's totally different personality, totally extroverted, And she one day says to me, in reference to that, Daddy, if you get married again, how's that going to affect me and Usman? And I really had to have to talk with her that you don't have to worry about my relationship taking a front seat, over my responsibility, my charge to you and your brother. It's never gonna happen that way. And when you give them that stability, and they know, I could see the relief come over
yeah,
her,
they feel
on her.
calm.
She's like, okay,
Yeah.
you know what?
Yeah.
And then when you, like you said, you get along with mom, and you have
have
that
to.
relationship where mom is no longer your wife, but she's still a very good friend. It makes for a very not easy transition, but a smoother
Has to be
transition
smoother.
when it comes to
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
Okay, we got about 3 minutes left, so I need to at least talk a little bit about where these qualities came from. I can't have fatherhood without motherhood. I don't believe in separating them. Where are these qualities? Who instilled these in you? I mean, just lastly.
Oh, without a doubt, it was my mother. My mother was the backbone. She was the matriarch to our family, and she, was dealt a raw deal in the sense that my father passed away at a time when she had two very young children, and she was stuck with that, and she took on that responsibility. She didn't complain very much. When you see women sucking their teeth or something, I never saw my mother suck her teeth about anything. She just dealt with the situation.
It's like they don't get sick.
She didn't get sick. She had like 2 jobs. I was playing baseball at the time. She rarely came to my games because she was always working. I mean, at 8, I had to come home and get my brother something to eat. So it was like, I saw all that and I said, listen, I can do this too.
Okay.
And that's where it came from.
Will, 1 minute.
It all comes from my mother. She instilled, at 14, when people worry about going back to school, my mother said, you're 14, you go to school and get your working papers. That's the first thing you focus on. And she taught responsibility very early. 15, 16, I was buying my own school clothes, and anything I needed for school was my responsibility. So it seemed hard then, but she was instilling responsibility to be a parent at a very, very, very young age. And I owe it all to her and her hard work. Absolutely. It's easy. That goes without saying.
And my final word is to Dean Wing. You were a great mother, are a great mother, great grandmother, great friend, and mother to probably 17, 20 other children. She's that cornerstone house where kids just start coming through the door, and it's Mama Dean, and she's taught a lot of us to be fathers, and a lot of the women who come through to be mothers. She gives a real meaning to the word parent. And it's like I said, it's an unselfish thing. No sick days. Every time I ask my kids for a sick day, they send me rejected, denied.
Denied, right?
And they just get rid of me. But this was a wonderful talk, fellas. I'm glad
Absolutely.
you guys came. Will, I need to have you back to discuss some Stecker.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we need to get your brother Evan back because he has a compelling story as well in terms of being a father, being a professional, being an artist. And we just need to know about book number 2, man. But
doubt.
this has been the People's Forum. I'm Kwame Innis. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.